Good evening, everyone. Good evening. And thank you for joining me on this Friday night for our traditional ghost story time. How are we doing here today? So, let me start off by saying hello to my loyal followers who are always here. Baywatch, Sven Larson, Tommy2274, good to see you. Adam Crevorcier, my friend, good to see you guys. So happy to see you. Todd Father, good to see you. Thank you all for stopping in. I think I got an interesting tale for you tonight. Mike F. in the house. I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you, my friend. Instead of my usual old fashioned, I have a little glass of cognac just to sip tonight. Just felt like it for a change. It's rather warm, unseasonably warm for February, actually. But, you know, that's how it goes. What can you say? In the Northeast, in New Jersey, that's how it goes. So let's do our traditional lighting of our candle here. Can't have a ghost story without a lit candle. My other candles. Where are my other ones? There we go. Here's my other. Here's my other one. Here we go. I think 2 is good for now. There we go. That'll work. So anyway, tonight, as I've billed it, is Ghosts of the White House. Now, you'd be surprised how many ghosts or tales of ghosts there are that come out of being associated with the actual White House. In fact, there are 14 different ghosts that have been seen or heard in the halls of the White House, which to me is fascinating. That something, well, I mean, the White House itself is 200 years old at this point, and there's a lot of history in there. And obviously, if there's going to be ghosts, they're going to be around that type of impacted emotional areas, like a White House, like, you know, a seat of government like that. So anyway, what I'm going to do is go through these guys one at a time. So 14 of them. I'm going to start in chronological order and see how this goes. A lot to remember here, so I have some notes because it's a lot to remember 14 different ghost stories. Todd Father, you're out driving? Oh, okay. Well, be careful. Tommy Stiggs, good to see you, my friend. TT Rad, good to see you. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. So anyway, let's start at the very beginning. Now, as you may know, the first president to be in the White House was John Adams, the second president. George Washington did not spend time in the White House. It wasn't built yet when he was the president. But how did they obtain the land? Well, they obtained the land for this from an individual by the name of David Burns. And he was said to be a wealthy landowner that owned a lot of Washington, D.C., what is currently Washington, D.C. And he sold this land to the government, to the new republic, to build the seat and the capital. So David Burns is our first ghost of the White House. Now, there's not much of a backstory to this other than that he owned the land that originally it's built on. But he is said to have been seen or heard on the White House since its beginning, because he died very shortly after the land was purchased. And he has been seen on and off over the 200 years by various presidents and various presidents' support staff. Now, the most notable ones occurred And it usually happens in what's called the yellow oval room, which is a room in the it's a round room, obviously, and it's yellow. It's painted yellow, and Lillian Rogers Parks was the seamstress and valet for FDR. And she swore that one day she was in the yellow room working and she felt an unusual presence. And in fact, it got very cold in the room unnecessarily. There was no explanation as to why it got so cold in the room. And then she heard a faint voice that seemed to get louder as it went on. And it simply said, "I'm Mr. Burns." And each time it got louder, "I'm Mr. Burns. I'm Mr. Burns." And in fact, this was so startling to her that she ran out of the room and refused to go back into the yellow oval room from then on. She wouldn't work in any room except that room. And then also in the Truman administration, there was a guard who heard the very same or had the very same experience of the light, the very soft, "I am Mr. Burns," and then it getting louder, "I am Mr. Burns. I am Mr. Burns." So those are like the notable stories where you can point to someone specifically and say they heard them. But it's been documented that many generations of presidents that were in there have heard that disembodied voice saying, "I'm Mr. Burns." Could it be the Mr. Burns that sold the land to the White House? It's plausible. You know, it makes sense. Who else could it possibly be? So that's our first ghost, David Burns, the ghost of David Burns, a wealthy landowner. The next ghost is none other than Abigail Adams, the vice president. The president, John Adams' wife, First Lady, Abigail Adams. And just to remind you of what she looked like, here's a portrait of her. That was Abigail Adams, and I'm sure you've heard about her in school. She was very famous, you know, for the impact she had as a woman on the presidency, on her husband, the decisions he made. She was kind of the first co-president, so to speak, with her husband, John Adams, who trusted her very much and spent and valued her counsel very much. But anyway, it is said that Abigail's ghost haunts the White House as well. And it's specifically in what is called the East Room, obviously on the east side of the east side of the White House. And it's an interesting experience because what people have described is that they are in the East Room and suddenly they again will feel a presence. But this time it's much more than that Mr. Burns. It's not just a voice. What they'll do is they'll feel a presence, and then slowly they'll smell the scent of lavender billowing through the air with an accompaniment of what wet clothes smells like. And you really have to think to smell what that is, but we've all experienced it, what wet clothes kind of smell like. It's that lavender smell, and then there's this wet clothes smell. And as those smells engulf you, you will see out of the corner of your eyes, you'll see Abigail's ghost walking into the room with her hands outstretched like this, as if she's carrying laundry to be hung. And it said that she would hang laundry in the East Room because it was the warmest of the room, and that's where they would dry best. But every now and then, this experience will happen where Abigail will walk into the East Room carrying her laundry to be hung. And some say they've seen her actually go and hang up spiritual laundry in the East Room by the windows. So it's quite a creepy experience to have the senses of smell and the visual of Abigail at the same time. Quite a powerful ghostly encounter. So that's Abigail Adams, number 2. Number 3 is Dolly Madison. Now, Dolly Madison was the wife and first lady under James Madison. And if you recall, James Madison was the president during the War of 1812, when the British invaded America in an attempt to, ultimately what they tried to do is take America back as a colony. But there's more complicated issues to it. But that's what would have happened if we lost. We would have become a British Commonwealth again. But anyway, she was the vice president. She was the wife of the president, James Madison. And her ghost is seen not in the White House itself, but in the Rose Garden. Now, the Rose Garden of the White House is very famous. It's been there almost 200 years, and it was actually started by Dolly Madison. So she's credited with organizing the planting of the Rose Garden. And the Rose Garden in the White House is world famous. People come to see it, etc. Dignitaries walk through it, etc. Now, every time there's talk, they say every time there's talk about changing the Rose Garden or moving the Rose Garden, Dolly Madison's ghost will appear, and she will appear in the garden and will not leave for a week or so until the idea changes or the idea kind of dies out and disappears so that the Rose Garden remains unchanged. Now, if you remember, you probably don't remember. She's not you don't really see her. You don't see her too often because it's not a famous name like Abigail Adams. You probably would see her in your history books. But Dolly Madison, I did find a picture of Dolly Madison. Not a picture, obviously too old to have an actual picture, but a painting of her. And this is what Dolly Madison looked like. James Madison's wife. And this is what they see. It's a young, not an old, a young Dolly Madison walking through the garden, tending to the roses quietly. Her spirit disturbed because the concept of changing what she created summons her spirit to defend it. Okay. Now, that was number 3, Dolly Madison. Now, number 4, still in the area of the War of 1812, when the British. Now, during the War of 1812, things were pretty bad for the United States. In fact, the British actually burned the White House. And there is said to be a ghost of a British soldier, one of those who lit the torches to the White House and burnt it to the ground. And he's said to be seen at night walking the grounds, waving a torch over his head. Now, this hasn't been seen in quite a while, but it has been documented over the years. Every now and then, this British soldier's ghost will appear, or just aimlessly wandering with a torch, I presume on his way to set fire to the house. But obviously, it's a spiritual torch, so nothing happens. Let me just say hello to some folks. Hello, Paul C. Good to see you. Hi. Hey, Baywatcher. Hi, how are you? I saw you before. I don't know if you were here. I know you were here at the beginning, but I don't know if you hung around the whole time. Damn it, Mandy. Good to see you. Nice to see you guys. Hey, thank you. All right, so that's number 4, the British soldier. Now, let's move on to number 5. Number 5 is Old Hickory Andrew Jackson himself. Most people know Andrew Jackson, famous hero of the War of 1812, who eventually becomes president. Tough, rugged guy, came from nothing, fought and earned his way through life and was kind of ruthless at times. But, that's why they called him Old Hickory, hard as hickory. But it is said that Andrew's ghost is one of the ghosts that resides in the White House. Now, his ghost was seen by Mary Todd Lincoln, Lincoln's wife, during his presidency, during the early 60s, during the Civil War itself. And it is said that she would hear him stomping and swearing through the halls. Now, Andrew Jackson was famous for swearing. He had a terrible mouth. In fact, he had a parrot that he taught to curse. His parrot would recite curses. So it's not unusual, and it's not far beyond believing that if there's a ghost that's swearing, it's probably Andrew Jackson. But Mary Todd Lincoln swore that she saw Andrew Jackson's ghost pacing up and down, angry, stomping, and cursing, which is something that he traditionally would do. He was a very emotional guy, and he got angry very easily. and would often stroll the halls angry at whatever it was bothering him. So walking up and down the halls every night. And actually, President Truman also wrote to his wife that he would listen and hear Andrew's ghost walking, and the floors popping and creeping, and the drapes would move back and forth whenever Andrew was disturbed, when he was angry about something. So Andrew's ghost, an angry guy, is still angry after all these years, and his spirit carries on that emotional anger in the White House. So that's number 5, Andrew Jackson himself, Old Hickory. Number 6, President William Henry Harrison. A very unknown president. He was only president for 31 days. He took the office in 1841 and died 31 days later of a cold he caught from being out in the rain. So he wasn't there long, but he was there long enough for his ghost to have some attachment to the place. And it is said that his ghost patrols the attic of the White House, that he'll walk up and down in the attic, and the fact that there'll be noise in the attic, movement. And in fact, several White House staff members have investigated the noise in the attic and claim to have seen the spirit of William Henry Harrison walking up and down, pacing in the attic. Now, why he would be in the attic, I don't know. And none of the stories say anything as to, or even propose or suppose why he would be in the attic. But that's where his ghost chose to reside. So if there's ever some noise in the attic, it tends to be William Henry Harrison's ghost. Number 6, William Henry Harrison. Okay, let's move on to number 7. Now, number 7 is President John Tyler. President John Tyler actually took over for William Henry Harrison when he died. He was the vice president, and he became president. John Tyler became president after Henry Harrison died. Now, it's said that his ghost haunts the Blue Room. Now, there's different themes in all the rooms in the White House, right? The Blue Room, the Yellow Oval Room, the Oval Office, the Lincoln bedroom. There's all these different themes. But the Blue Room seems to be where John Tyler likes to reside. And those that have seen his ghosts say that his ghost is really a reenactment of him proposing to his wife. Now, the background to that story is that John Tyler's wife had died, and he met his current wife, the new wife, which was Julia Gardner, while he was president, and actually proposed to her in the White House. And supposedly this is where it occurred, in the Blue Room. And so you see him down on his knees with the ring, proposing to his future wife, Julia Gardner. So it's a kind of a pleasant ghost experience, not a creepy one or scary one. If there's a ghost, obviously a ghost might be scary in of itself, but not a frightening type of thing. It's kind of like a romantic and sentimental haunting, I would say. So that's kind of neat. I'd like to see William Henry Harrison proposing to his wife in the Blue Room, yes. So that was number 7, John Tyler. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. It wasn't William Henry Harrison. It was John Tyler that proposed to his wife. So John Tyler in the Blue Room, Harrison in the attic. Andrew Jackson stomping up and down the walls. So that's number 7. Number 8 is probably, to me, the most creepy. It's Lincoln's son, Willie. Now, President Lincoln's son, Willie, died while he was in office, and he was a child. And that's always so very sad when a child dies so young, and especially when they're young. So, and he was loved so dearly by the president and Mary Todd Lincoln. So much that it was such a devastation when he passed. And it obviously would be a devastation to any child passes, but this is what he looked like. Now, sightings of his ghost happened almost immediately after his death, after his passing, after he'd been buried, almost immediately. And in fact, it was that set Mary Todd Lincoln on this obsession with the occult. where she would hold seances in the White House in attempts of contacting her lost son. So, um, and the creepy thing about it, the creepiest thing about this, now, he was known to play with soldiers, toy soldiers, and toy cannons. When he passed, his toys were put away in a cabinet and locked. Now, there are stories that in the year preceding his death, yes, after his death, on several occasions, those toys were found out in the room that he normally would play them, in front of the fireplace, in the positions that he would traditionally known to play with those toys. So pretty unsettling to see the toys of this child out there when he is long gone, as if his ghost had been playing with them. So a lot of people over the years have seen Lincoln's son, William. In fact, Ulysses S. Grant, the president after Andrew Johnson, so it was Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, then Grant, stated that he saw Willie's ghost on several occasions playing with toys in the Lincoln in the well, it ultimately becomes the Lincoln Room, but at the time it was a study that Lincoln would use, and Willie would come in there and play with his toys. So President Grant would see him from time to time in that bedroom, that current bedroom where he'd be playing with his toys. Very, very unsettling and creepy encounter to see the ghost of a 12-year-old child playing with his toys. So that was number 8, Lincoln's ghost. Hello, Stefano. Hello, Gina. Good to see you guys. Bobo, good to see you. Thank you all for stopping in. Number 9. Number 9 is Honest Abe himself, Abraham Lincoln. Now, I spoke about Abraham Lincoln in the summer when I did an episode on the ghosts of the Lincoln assassination. So check that out if you're interested. I got into a lot more depth there. So I'm not going to go into too much depth here about Abraham Lincoln himself, but suffice it to say, I'll say that Abraham Lincoln himself has been seen many times in the White House. In fact, Calvin Coolidge's wife, Grace, saw Lincoln standing looking out the window of the Oval Office above the Potomac, in deep concentration and thought, looking out over the Potomac. Lady Bird Johnson, who was Johnson's wife, felt Lincoln's presence in a room while she was watching a television program, a documentary on Lincoln, and to the point that she felt him there. She swears that she felt his presence in the room. Eleanor Roosevelt, FDR's wife, used the Lincoln bedroom as a study, and also said that she swore she felt Lincoln's presence. And she did a lot of writing, and she was notorious for saying that she felt inspired by Lincoln's presence in her writing, that he was kind of inspiring her or possessing her to the point to help her write. It's quite an interesting take on the situation. Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands, one time when she was staying in the White House, a lot of times foreign dignitaries, leaders of countries, will stay in the White House, or they did at least. I don't know if they currently do that, but back in this time they did. She heard a knock on her bedroom door one night. She answered the door, kind of amazed, or that someone would be knocking on her door late at night. Could it be an office? Could it be a White House staff member? Could it be something? Who knows? But she nonetheless got out of bed and answered the door. As she opened the door, she saw standing there looking at her from across the hall the full 6'5" stature of Abraham Lincoln with top hat. And at that point, she actually fainted and fell to the ground and had to be revived in the morning. She stayed there all night, fainted, passed out from this experience, seeing Lincoln's ghost. So quite a powerful encounter. Not that Lincoln's ghost was being scary or haunting, but just the fact that he was there, the shock of her put her out of it. Winston Churchill, the famous Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of Britain, that got Britain through the war in World War II, was staying at the White House and was taking a bath and emerged from the bath And as he came back into the bedroom, he saw Abraham Lincoln sitting in a chair by the fireplace in the room. The room that he was staying in had a fireplace, and he was sitting right there, relaxing by the fire in a chair. Lillian Rogers Parks, a seamstress, claims and swears that she saw him pacing on the upper floor. Abraham Lincoln pacing back and forth in a worried state. And even Ronald Reagan, the Reagans, swore that their dog would never go into the Lincoln bedroom. Remember, the Lincoln bedroom was his study. So that's where he tends to be seen, in the Lincoln bedroom, because that's where he went through a lot of the emotional trauma of the war in there. So that's where his ghost tends to relive things. And the Reagan's dog would never go into that room. And in fact, when tried to be forced, and they would sit, it would forcibly stop itself from going into that room, and would just bark and bark and bark, bark and bark into the room as if there was something there. So the Reagans were convinced that Lincoln's ghost was there as well. So that's good old Abe, number 9. Number 10, still in the era of the Civil War, we have Anna Surratt. Now, Anna Surratt, if you know, there's a lot that goes around the assassination of President Lincoln, and the Surratts were knee deep in it. And Mary Surratt was the first woman actually executed in the United States for that at the time. She was hung along with other co-conspirators. Now, there's a lot of evidence that shows that she really should not have been hung, that she wasn't a conspirator at all. In fact, at most, what she did was allow the conspirators to meet in her boarding house. But the real conspirator was her son, and she would not give up her son. And as a result, some believe that the deck was stacked against her, and she was kind of railroaded at the trial. She was given a military trial, not a traditional, United States citizens trial, and was convicted and hung by the neck till dead with the other conspirators. Now, her daughter, Anna Surratt, from time to time, people swear that they see her daughter the spirit of her daughter, banging on the White House doors, the front doors of the White House, banging on it, pleading to see Andrew Johnson, who was the president at the time, and begging for a pardon of her mother. So allegedly, at times, there's knocking at the door, banging on the door, the front door of the White House, and weeping cries for help in getting her mother pardoned from this horrible fate of being hanged. So Anna Surratt is the ghost that they say they see. And I'll give you I found a picture of Anna Surratt just for the sake of it, to show you what she looks like, or looked like, I should say. She was an attractive woman at the time, a young woman. She was younger than this at the time when her mother was killed, but her mother was executed, I should say. But anyway, so she's there too. So she's our 11th ghost, Anna Surratt. Now, the 12th ghost is no one other than Harry Truman, President Harry Truman. Now, the background to this is Harry Truman was an everyday guy for the most part. He was a lifelong politician, but he was an everyday guy. He didn't come from money. In fact, when he left the White House, he was broke. He was dirt poor, So Harry Truman was a regular guy, and he would always joke a lot. And one of the things that he joked about is that if he didn't go into politics, he would have been a piano player at a whorehouse. And he was an excellent piano player. He was notorious for playing the piano, and he would often play the piano in the White House. Now, over the years, there have been, since his death, so since the 60s, there have been tales of hearing piano music playing in the White House. And a lot of people think it's Harry Truman himself. And the reason they do that, it's because of the type of music that they hear. He was notorious for playing 1920s jazz on the piano. And the Bush twins, Barbara and Jenna, George W. Bush's daughters who lived in the White House, they were young at the time and lived when he was president, swore they heard Truman playing the piano on several occasions, playing 1920s music on the ivories, and singing opera, which was another thing he liked. He liked opera. Um, so these are the things they hear. They're reminiscent of things he liked in the White House. So Harry Truman is the buck stops here, famous for that saying. The buck stops here. Harry Truman, number 12, our number 12 ghost. Now, number 13 is an unnamed ghost. It's just a general feeling or a general noises and sounds that the Obamas have encountered when they were in the White House. So there was no real pointing to who it was or who the ghost might be, etc. Stuff like that. Oh, I missed the number 11th ghost. What is wrong with me? I missed the number 11th. I went to 12, then I went to 13. All right, let's go back. Before Harry Truman, the number 11th ghost is a really creepy thing it's a really creepy ghost. It's called The Thing. That's all they ever called it, was The Thing. And The Thing showed up for the first time in 1911 in the White House. And The Thing is said to be the spirit of an unknown 15-year-old boy. He seems to be dressed in like the Victorian style, from like the 1890s. And it is said that he would come up behind people and grab their necks and grab their shoulders and startle them. Out of nowhere, you'd be in the room, you'd be in the White House, and suddenly you'd feel something on your shoulders and you jump, and it would be The Thing is touching you. So just the name itself is very creepy, The Thing. But that's went on. And in fact, Major Archibald Butt, who was major, obviously, and part of President Taft's staff, wrote about that his shoulders were touched several times, and he felt like increasing pressure and the thing leaning on him. So very creepy, very, very creepy concept. An unknown ghost like that just touching you. But there hasn't been many sightings of the thing since. It was really the first half of the 19th century that occurred. I haven't heard or been able to find any stories in the later half. I'm sorry, of the 20th century, the first half of the 20th century. I couldn't find anything in the latter half of the 20th century. All right, so back to number 13. So that was number 11. Harry Truman's number 12. Number 13 is this unnamed ghost. Now, the Obamas is the most recent group of presidential family, the Obama presidential family, that encountered this, and they describe it as frequently be awoken in the night by loud noises coming from the hall, rattling and knocking and such, and strange, creepy sounds and it would always focus in, and it would end up in the drawing room. So it would start in the hall and end up in the drawing room. Now, could that be Andrew Jackson? I don't know. They could never point to this specifically, a specific ghost, simply that this rattling and knocking and noises would start in the hall and end in the drafting room. And so who knows who that ghost could be, or it could be another spirit for all we know. But could be Andrew. But they didn't hear cursing like Andrew Jackson would normally. You'd hear the cursing and the angriness. But they never heard that. But all of the Obama family, believe it or not, claim they have encountered this in the White House. So that was number 13, unknown ghost. And then finally, number 14. Now, number 14 is I don't know if you would call it a ghost, or you can call it a demon. It's basically considered to be a demon cat. Now, this demon cat has been spotted in the White House or around the White House many times over the years. And it is said to appear the size of a normal cat. And then as you watch it, it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, to the size of an elephant, and then it vanishes. So it looks like a regular cat. and then it'll start to expand and expand, and suddenly it's the size of an elephant, and then it vanishes. So it's spiritual, obviously, but they call it the demon cat, and they say that it appears as a precursor to a very traumatic and evil event that's going to happen. So it's kind of like an early warning system of some evil that is going to take place. Now, the first time it was cited was in 1862 in the basement, and this wasn't in the basement of the White House, it was in the basement of the Capitol building. And it's sometimes described as a tabby cat. I'm sure you know what a tabby cat is. And it's sometimes described as a black cat. So who knows? Maybe it changes form, but that's what they say. So in 1962, it was there. 1862, it was there, and it was the forebearer to a battle where many Americans died. I believe it was Antietam. So it was one of the most bloodiest days of the Civil War. And it was next seen in 1898. And the Washington Post actually wrote a story about it, that this thing had popped up, and several people had encountered it, and that it was a forebearer of bad tidings to come. And there was, and then it is said that it was seen in 1929 on the night before the big crash, before the stock market crashed and we entered the Depression. So an article in the Washington Post in 1935 described it as having glowing eyes with all the hue and ferocity of headlights from a fire engine. So it's a cat, but its eyes are glaringly red and much like the lights of a fire engine. And it was a White House guard that actually saw it on the night prior to the crash in 1929. And then it was said that it was seen the day before the Kennedy assassination, which was in 1963, in October of 1963. Or November of 1963. So that's the night before that, the demon cat was witnessed in the White House. And then the latest version of it was the night before 9/11, the demon cat made an appearance. So one of the biggest tragedies in American history, it appeared the night before. Now, is it an attempt to warn people, or is it just a manifestation of the evil that's about to happen? You could look at it both ways, but the demon cat is there, and many people have witnessed it. So that is number 14. So those are our 14 ghosts that live or don't live in the White House. So that's how it goes. That's the story, my friends. That's my story of the 14 ghosts of the White House. So I hope you find those stories, each one of those little individual stories, interesting. I thought they were. Whether if I ever take a tour of the White House, which I never have, I've been to Washington, D.C., but I've never got into the White House. I will certainly look around to see if I could witness anything or encounter anything like that. Well, thank you, TT. I appreciate that. And thank you, damn it, Mandy. Don, what are you talking for? I said the day before 9/11 it was seen. The day before 9/11 it was seen. That was the latest. So no one's seen it since 2001. That's a good thing. We don't want to see it. It's a bad tidings. It's a sign of bad things. We don't want to see the demon cat. Yeah, 14 sounds like a spooky party. Yes. Yes, Mike F. So anyway, so that's my story. So I hope you liked it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. The good news is that this channel is now monetized. I'm so happy I'm so happy I finally achieved that. So thank you all for your support and helping me get there with watch hours. That was my biggest thing. I didn't have watch hours, but now I got there and I am now monetized. So if you see this video on a replay, you probably had to skip through some advertisements for that. So anyway, that's where we are. That's where I am. Skip the 13 in the story? No, I didn't do that. You're right. I should skip the 13 in the story. I didn't. But the 13 is, what is the 13? The 13's at the bottom. Yeah, the 13, we could skip the 13s. It's just the Obamas thinking that they hear something. It wasn't really anything specific about a particular ghost. But those are our ghosts, and I think they're quite interesting. Especially if you know the history around the White House and everything, how it was burned to the ground was so fascinating to me, how it was rebuilt. So many things have gone on there, so many decisions that impacted so many people over the years. The fate of this nation has been decided many times there. So it's quite understandable that there might be ghostly hauntings there. So that's my story, as I'd say. Thank you, Don. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, 3 cents, damn it. That's right, Mandy. 3 cents. It's worth 3 cents. Thank you for watching them. But anyway, that's how it goes. That's my story. I hope you appreciated it. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them as always. But, thought it was a good one. Thought it was an interesting subject. White House ghosts. My last one about the groundhog stuff was kind of popular. I actually almost had 200 views on that, so I was pretty happy about that. That was a kind of a delayed reaction. A lot of people watched it on the replay, so that was pretty cool. So of course we have our Godfather show on Sunday, so please join us for that. Tommy and Thindu and myself. We're coming to the end of the Godfather 2. And then we're going to be prepping for Godfather 3. So we're going to continue the talks as the saga continues. And a lot of people don't like it, but they do. Oh, thank you so much, TT. That is not necessary. Thank you so much for the super chat, I guess is what it's called. Thank you so much. You're so kind. Not necessary. Believe me, not necessary. I didn't want to be monetized for that. I want it to be monetized solely because it's a goal. And if YouTube is going to make money off of me, I wanted to try to get some of that money that YouTube's making off of me, because I know they put ads on my old videos anyway. So, but thank you so much. You're very kind. So anyway, that's how it goes. I want to thank each and every one of you for dropping in, hanging out, saying hi to each other, being cordial as always. That's the best part of all of this. And as always, I want to say, please like if you can, build the guild, spread the word, all that fun stuff. And we're going to continue to get better and better. More stories, better stories, whatever. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm planning on doing some original stories, which are just stories that I wrote. So we'll see what happens. I'm gonna think about doing that. And they're not fully written stories. They're story ideas that I had that I started to write about. So anyway, that's in the future. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. And I'll continue to do these. I will continue to look for interesting ghostly tales, because that's something I've always enjoyed, and I hope you enjoy it too. All right. So as always, I want to say thank you for joining. Have a wonderful week. And God bless. And I always say, stay scared. It's fun to be scared. So with that, we're going to blow out our candles and say, have an awesome weekend from the Wine Guild. Wait, where's my cursor here? From the Wine Guild to you.